Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Football Palestine Extra, the podcast for our premium subscribers. So, if you like what you see and hear in front of the paywall, consider subscribing to see the full episode and all the juicy bits behind the paywall. On this week's episode, our running order is we have a return of football to Palestine, but not in the way you think. We're going to talk a little bit about Oday Dabbagh, who's the top scorer of the Egyptian Premier League with 7 goals in over 15 match days. And then we're going to talk a little bit about what happens over the next 10 days as it relates to the political side of football. So I'm mentioning Israel's potential ban from UEFA and what might happen there. We might have some clarity not this week, but next week. So we'll get into that, and those sections will be primarily behind the paywall. Now, before I get into anything else, I have to drop a little teaser, a little ad, a little mention to another podcast that I've done called Scoreless at the Break. The first episode is available for free. It's a 6-part audio series. The second episode is out now, and we'll be dropping episodes over the next month. If you haven't given it a listen, consider giving it a listen, because I think if you like Palestinian football, if you're interested in the history and politics of Palestine, specifically the modern history, I think you'll find this quite eye-opening. So what I've done here is I've used the football team to tell the story of Palestine, and specifically a really overlooked time period in Palestine, and that's the time between 2005 and 2011. And a lot happened in that time. Passing of Yasser Arafat, the election of Abu Mazen, who is still around today, 21 years later, running the Palestinian Authority. I don't know if you can call it a government, but running the Palestinian Authority. And then it also coincided with the election of Hamas, the siege put on Gaza, and there's a lot of weird overlap with the national team and with football that you'll find throughout this podcast. It's got the feel of a Guardian long read, so if you like that type of content, I think you'll absolutely love Scoreless at the Break. So if you haven't checked out the first episode, it's available on our YouTube channel, and then vis-a-vis Substack and everywhere else you get your podcast should you wish to consume it in that form. The first episode that we covered, that we put out there, covers basically what Palestine was like right after Yasser Arafat's death. So that's considered like the end of the Second Intifada. And it also marks the return of Azmi Nassar to the national team. Azmi Nassar was the coach when Palestine won bronze at the 1999 Pan-Arab Games. He left the national team in 2000, came back in 2005. And his second stint is a little bit overlooked because he did so much to give the national team a second lease on life. But he unfortunately passes away in 2007, is stricken with cancer in 2006. And we sort of cover Azmi's life in the first 2 episodes. So if you're interested in Palestinian football, if you're interested in Palestinian politics and history and culture, I think this is really the podcast for you. If you have checked it out, if you like it, share it with a friend. If they don't know about Football Palestine, I'm sure they would love to get to know a little bit more about my work vis-a-vis through this not totally sporting lens. So that's all I got to say for Scoreless at the Break. Let's move on to our first item on the agenda, the return of football competition to Palestine. And it's not to the West Bank, it's to Gaza. And I think a lot of you might be wondering, what is going on here? What is this tournament? You might have seen it sort of mentioned in various social media posts. Look, I think overall it's a positive thing, right? It's positive that footballers, both current footballers, retired footballers, get to showcase their skills. It is something that is being supported by the Norwegian government, who's donated this pitch. If you've seen any of the images, you can tell that it's not a standard sized pitch. B, it's built in a place that's completely destroyed. I mean, all the buildings around there are just completely reduced to rubble. And then another government stepped in to also provide support. I think the idea of a tournament actually came from the Emirati donors. And yeah, I wouldn't really call it a return to football because it's not on a standard sized pitch. It won't do anything to move the needle as far as developing football in the country. It's good that like a small semblance of normality can return to Gazan society, but I think the big question here is, where is the Palestine Football Association in all of this? And if you can put together a rudimentary tournament, even if it's not on an official size pitch, but if you can put it on in Gaza, then why can't you do something similar in the West Bank? And this is something that I've been keen to mention since the war and the genocide started, was that it's so important to find a way to make sure that the league goes on. And my idea is simply this. Look, the format might not be possible, right? Just because movement from city to city in the West Bank is super, super difficult. But what we do know about clubs in the West Bank is that they are clustered, right? You've got this cluster of Hebron clubs, your Ahli al-Khalil, your Shabab al-Khalil, Shabab al-Samu', all Shabab Dora, they're not in the Premier League anymore, but those types of clubs. Then you've got clubs sort of concentrated in the middle, the likes of Rajoub Wadi Nis, the likes of Al-Khadir, the likes of Hilal al-Quds, the likes of Jabal al-Mukabbir. All those are kind of around the Jerusalem area, right? Bethlehem, Jerusalem area. And then you've got a concentration of clubs that are further up north. Your Balata would be the number one, Thaqafat al-Kam would be another one, Islamic Qalqilya, Jenin, whatever northern town you can think of, right? But basically the big two would be Markaz Balata, Thaqafat al-Karam, right? So why don't you just make take these 12 teams, divide them into 3 clusters, play tournaments, right? Have these teams play each other 4 times, right? 5 times. I don't care how many times, right? If they have to play each other every week, it doesn't matter. Have them play each other in a smaller regionalized tournament. Get a winner and or the best 2 or whatever, and then do a playoff in a centralized area, sort of like cup competition. All we're asking for is for the ability for footballers to play 22 games. It's really not a long league season. And if it has to be regionalized, so be it. But at least football goes on. And why is that important? It's not even so much about the product. It's not even so much about the competition. It's just for the sheer fact that the players that aren't good enough to go abroad and get a contract abroad, they still have a very important role to play as professional or even semi-professional footballers, and that is to bring up the next generation. You cannot put a quantifiable number on somebody that played with Oday Dabbagh, or played with Rami Hamadi, or played with Tamer Siyam, or played with Musa Firawi, or played with, the names just keep going, right? Because you're talking about half a dozen in Egypt and half a dozen in Qatar. As far as Palestinian footballers are concerned, and a couple guys in Libya and a guy in Kuwait, and they're playing all over the Arab world. And if there is somebody still in the ecosystem that has the experience of playing alongside these guys, and maybe it was a fringe guy on the national team but just didn't get his chance, he can still teach so much to the younger generation coming through. And for those of you who are longtime listeners and longtime followers of Football Palestine, you will understand my point here. And my point is that this league, even at its height, was nothing much to talk about, but it served one crucial purpose, and that was it gave youngsters the ability to turn professional. And those youngsters could then state their case to play for the under 20 team, the under 23 team, the senior team, and slowly but surely you saw a pipeline being created from the West Bank to the national team, and then to offers abroad, right? We go back 10 years, 15 years, and you see that very, very clearly, right? A guy like Abdul Latif Bahdari, who is from Gaza, left Gaza, went to the West Bank, played in the West Bank, went to Al-Wahdat, went to Saudi Arabia off the back of that, went to Iraq, and then played all over the Arab world before coming back home. Ashraf Nouman, same thing, right? Was at Rajoub Nice, went to Al-Faisali in Jordan, went to Al-Faisali in Saudi Arabia. This is a guy that got his chance, and they were older, right? We're talking about guys who were born in the mid-'80s. Fast forward a couple of years, and then you've got the likes of Ahmed Maher and Damir Siam, who went to Morocco after playing in the local league and playing for the national team. And then you fast forward a couple of years after that, and then you've got the likes of Oday Dabbagh, and him going from Al Hilal to the Kuwaiti League, to the Portuguese League, to Belgium, to Scotland, and now playing for Zamalek and being the top scorer of the Egyptian League. All these guys wouldn't be where they were if there wasn't a league. And we are now fast approaching 3 years of no league play. The last time a ball was kicked was October 2nd, I believe, October 2nd, 2023. We are now in February of 2026. And the success of the national team and what they've done is really papering over the cracks of what could be a very, very serious problem. Because right now, most people watching Palestinian football and watching the national team just assume. They assume that, hey, we always go to the Asian Cup, right? Well, we're at 2015 and 2019 and 2023, and we're going to be at 2027. And, we got past the second round of World Cup qualifying, so that means the next time around, we're definitely going to do that, right? Because that's what happened before. And at the Arab Cup, look, we won a game at the Arab Cup. It means the next Arab Cup will also win a game and get out of our group, right? Not necessarily. Football is not linear. Our progression has been linear over the past, literally over the past 15 years, right? Since Jamal Mahmoud took over in 2011, you're looking at a team that went through the doldrums, and then Jamal Mahmoud takes over, gets us to the first Asian Cup, and we just kept going like this. But there, if the foundation is not stable, nothing will guarantee us continuing. So yeah, while I'm happy to see these images of footballers practicing their craft, even if on a small pitch in Gaza, that does not mean that football, proper football, professional football, has returned to Palestine. And there needs to be a plan to get the league back as soon as possible. And I do not understand for the life of me. Rajoub doesn't say anything against Gianni Infantino. Well, if you're going to be so friendly towards him, get something out of him. Because, Gianni Infantino gave an interview to Yildiz Hakim last week where he said he wanted to see Russia unsuspended because the suspension didn't serve anything, and that if Israel were to get suspended, it would be a defeat. And, immediately we heard the Ukrainian FA come out and put out a very strong statement in regards to what Gianni Infantino said. But we didn't hear anything from Jibril Rajoub. Nothing. Zero. I've got no words. I've got no words. So, if you're not going to criticize him, and if you're not going to bring things up to him, and if you're not going to play an active role in saving the pitch in Bethlehem that pertains to Haida's refugee camp, what exactly are you doing? What's your job? It's a big question mark. It's a big question mark. And the thing is, maybe people don't ask the question because we're still on this sugar high of how well we did at the Arab Cup, of just 2025 in general being such a great year, and us beating Iraq for the first time, and us, I almost don't want to say it, but almost qualifying for the World Cup, because if that penalty, which was dodgy, isn't given in the last minute to Oman, then Palestine goes, and then they're in a group with the UAE and Qatar, who weren't at all that impressive, and Palestine opened up the Arab Cup by beating Qatar on their own home pitch. So I think a lot of people are on the sugar high, and that papers over the cracks of all these things of, the league not coming back, the FA not doing its job. And unfortunately, we might be met with a very rude awakening. There might be enough gas in this tank for another cycle, but I really